Hi, everyone. Welcome to Avasant Empowering Beyond. It's my pleasure to welcome you at this year's event, and especially to this wonderful panel that we have, wonderful topic that we have on the hyper automation age, wiring business for agility and speed. Automation, has been a hot topic for the last several years. We've seen emergence of a lot of technologies, how they can be utilized for delivering business outcomes, for solving real business problems. And we have a wonderful set of panelists today to discuss this topic. Each of the panelists have been working in this space personally for last several years, have led their organizations, their teams to deliver solutions around automation. Um, so I'm really excited about today's panel. And with that, I would like to welcome the panelists here. Sidney Madison, she is the global lead for intelligent automation at Spotify. Sidney?
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I am, as Akshay said, the head of intelligent automation at Spotify. I have been there for almost 2 years now, and I've spent the past few years of my career in the intelligent automation space, specifically scaling up and maturing out centers of excellence for various Fortune 100 companies. And most recently, I published a book on robotic process automation as well, specifically citizen developer and the movement around upskilling business users to build their own automations.
Great. Welcome, Sidney. Next, Jairo Quiros, who leads the global shared services. He's the global vice president at Equifax. Jairo?
Great to be here. Happy to share a bit of our digital transformation journey at Equifax. And well, like you said, I lead the global shared services organization at Equifax. Been here for 22 years. But my team is comprised of 1,500 people. Pretty much we support all business units and center of excellence for the company, delivering about 500 different business processes from business operations, finance, accounting, security operations, technology, data analytics. And so it makes sense. It made sense for us to look into robotic process automation at the beginning, but I'm responsible to lead the global RPA COE and drive RPA adoption across the company. Not only RPA, but automation, which has become our strategy to drive culture around transformation.
Great, Jairo. Welcome. It was actually a great discussion. I think you and I were on a panel probably a couple of years ago now, and it was a great chat. And I'm really excited to continue the conversations from there on as well, and learn more
Likewise.
of what you guys have been to. Great. Next, I have Ajay Bell, who's the executive vice president at HCL Technologies. Ajay.
Hi, great to meet all of you. Great to be here, Akshay. I have been 20 years in HCL. My current portfolio is really around managing HCL's mega LT accounts. That's manufacturing, energy utilities, oil and gas, aero defense. We help clients in their transformation journey. So I know we are talking about hyper automation today, and really hyper automation with the purpose is really around trying to make sure that we make the difference for the clients in actually trying to achieve their goals, whether it's risk management, whether it is increased value delivered from a revenue or business standpoint, or cost reduction. And we help in all of those. Those are the key objectives and some key things that I'd like to talk about today. So great to be here.
Great, Ajay. Great to have you here. Great. So I think without wasting much time, I would probably just dive right into it, pick your brains on this exciting topic. Actually, to just begin with, probably want to just demystify this hyper automation, right? As all of you've been in this tracking this space, been working in this space. Early on we had just the automation, became the RPA wave. We went into cognitive automation or intelligent automation, and now we're talking about hyper automation. So I think first up, I really want to kind of demystify, declutter. Is it really another buzzword? Or is there something really changing in kind of this wave of automation? Are there new tools, new technologies which are really driving something different this time, or is there something more than just a marketing buzzword here? So I don't know, Sidney, you want to take it?
I think that it's a double-edged sword. I do think it's being used as a kind of marketing tool, but I also think there is an underlying principle that is correct, which is initially, if we think maybe 7, 8 years ago, there was a very small component of the industry that started to understand RPA, standalone by itself, just simple rules-based automation. And then as the industry has matured and we're kind of gaining speed, we're seeing all different types of industries, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's finance, start kind of understanding the value proposition behind RPA. We realize that it is only the functionality that we can gain out of RPA is very limited by itself as a standalone tool. And this is where we need that end-to-end kind of mindset about how do we facilitate that sort of transformation outside of the realm of just leveraging the RPA tools. And this then becomes the principle of hyperautomation, which is whether I'm talking about machine readable data, non-machine readable data, whether I am talking about understanding documents in different various languages, right, from a multinational standpoint, how do I actually build automation capabilities that can address those business problems? And that really, in my mind, is hyperautomation, where you are combining all of the different functionalities at your disposal, whether it's OCR, whether it's machine learning, artificial intelligence starting to come into play. But it's basically saying there's more out there and there's more potential to these types of automation outside of just the RPA spectrum. But to your point, I do think there's also a bit of a misnomer about hyperautomation and what that actually means. In my mind, it truly just means we are embracing the full capabilities of a truly automated end-to-end enterprise.
Got it. Jairo, based on your experience over the years, what's your take?
Yes, I'll have to concur with Sidney that hyperautomation is a word that is being used by many companies today, right? So whether that is to describe what they're trying to achieve or the products that they're selling. The reality is that certainly many things have changed over time. And like Sidney was mentioning, RPA was just one way of executing automation, which many of us have been doing for the last 20 years in one way or the other. But I think that the integration and orchestration of those efforts, thinking about hyperautomation like a way to accelerate your efforts, right? I think that word came, in my experience, from the need of companies trying to scale automation or RPA, right? In other words. But in reality, it's more than just the pace in which you can deploy bots. It is about what business issues you're trying to resolve. That's where the integration with other technologies that have been out there for quite some time, now those things start to make sense, right? So such as process mining, for instance, machine learning, and when you think about accelerating the efforts for you to identify the right opportunities and the right processes to automate, from the basic to the truly enterprise that is running a digital workforce now. And then we now have the need to rely on technology also to help connect both human and machine, and by the use of human in the loop methodologies or even tools that can allow you to connect both and execute the processes that you're executing, maximize the return of investment, and also looking into how do we continue to innovate. I think those many of those tools are really becoming a necessity rather than a luxury, but many of those tools are still to be matured in the way you can actually use them and allow your people within the company to learn and use those tools for you to maximize the effort.
Great, great. Ajay, you have perspective, and you deal with several clients, several Fortune 500, Global
Yeah.
2000 customers.
Yeah, I think so. I absolutely agree with Sidney and Jairo. I think, in brief, not to repeat what they already said, it is more of a marketing gimmick than anything else. In all honesty, because the tools capabilities have existed, they're maturing like everything else. And when they all come together, we are trying to give it a new word to basically say it's like, automation. Now it's hyper automation, localization, there's hyper localization, care, there's hyper care. We add that hyper everywhere to just show a faster speed of action capabilities, etc. And all of that is actually what is happening with hyper automation. But it is in a lot of ways simply maturing on natural maturing of technologies that already exist, whether it's the evolution of RPA, whether it's machine learning, whether it is computer vision, whether it is image analytics. It's coming together of all these technologies that have existed. As they're maturing, their capabilities are increasing, and all of them coming together to basically create an ability for business to leverage things at a much faster, at a much better rate. And that's what hyper automation is all about.
Great, great. In some ways, it's funny, right? It's in some ways it's always the same thing, which is to solve the end user problems, the business problems, right? And technology has always been a great enabler. And I think I appreciate the viewpoints. It's the technology, like Ajay, you said, it's been maturing fast, like it always does, and helps us kind of bring it all together, orchestrate it all together, and kind of again, once again, solve those complex business problems. A lot of the simpler ones have probably been solved through automation in the last several years or so. I also picked up actually a couple of other things. I think Jairo, you mentioned, and actually Sidney and Ajay too. All of this emphasis on the technologies coming together, and also some of these tools, right? So Jairo, I think you mentioned tools around process mining, and it used to be just process discovery, and so also there's greater emphasis on low code, no code tools, and so on, right? Do you see that playing a role and kind of accelerating this journey even further, making it faster, better, simpler for your employees?
So when it comes to the different components of a hyper automation platform, when you think about discovery, right? You mentioned that, right? So what areas of the business should you apply automation? I think process mining still requires a lot of maturity, in terms of how do you interpret, the huge amounts of data you can collect, right? So it's like navigating in a huge ocean of data, and so you want to make sure that when you're collecting data, which is important, is how to make sense. What are we trying to resolve for the business? So I think that still represents a challenge, right? So it's not one of those things such as when we're talking about citizen developer, right? So you're trying to make RPA accessible to the regular business user, right? And kind of give it a way in which they can feel comfortable about how they connect data, what tasks that they can automate, so whether that is in the past has been macros, today you have way more capacities for you to automate certain tasks you do with the data that you get, and I think that's okay. I think when it comes to the real business value to the enterprise, integration, cloud, the capabilities that we have experienced at Equifax, we just recently migrated our entire UiPath stack into our Google Cloud, and that is not only going to the cloud, but is going to the cloud with a purpose, right? So you have a way to scale, you have a better way to consume services and cloud services that before it was very hard, right, for you to be able to connect things and provide to your automations additional capabilities to be able to continue to evolve in the complexity of the solutions that you are trying to resolve, right? So as you're integrating cognitive, right, so clear examples of bots now talking to voice bots, right? So because we now deployed cognitive and NLP, and they can or speech to text, right? So they can translate and they can understand without being connected, just using the systems, that in our current interfaces. that is very powerful, right? But still, there's a lot to cover. And in my opinion, in our opinion at Equifax, I believe that the opportunities to leverage that technology are really huge. Anything from imaging, and understanding, and you guys mentioned data that is structured machine readable versus data that is not structured, and you're trying to make it a structure, right? So that technology really helps. Then when it comes to AI, I think there's a big gap still, right? So it's still not very, it's hard for us to really quantify the value as you move up into the technology complexity, right? That you have to now have to deploy it, right? So I think those things to me are really a combination of how do you learn how to use those tools and integrate that in your solutions. And in order to do that, then of course, educating your workforce, educating the people that are working with you in your RPA COE or automation COE is going to be critical.
Right. No, absolutely. And I think that you touch upon a couple of other things that are crucial, I think, in just terms of managing the stakeholders and so on. But before I go there, I don't know, Sidney, Ajay, any perspectives on just the usage of tools? Sidney, how do you see it getting used in Spotify and maybe in your prior experience?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. It's another kind of maturity factor that we're starting to see, which is, okay, now we're moving out of the IT-centric kind of mindset of these tools and saying, this is technology that can actually benefit end users, right? If we give them the knowledge that they need to actually be able to leverage this technology. And if you think about it one step further, the way that we are looking at it at Spotify is really, how do we do more and expand our business reach, right? But minimize our, or I should say, or optimize the way that we think about our workforce, right? Just the operational expenditures that we use there. So it really starts to become a different value proposition, where now it's about the amplification of your human workforce. And that comes in different flavors and tones based on whether you're talking about someone who is, let's say, like an accountant by trade versus someone who is a senior engineer. And so what we're seeing is there's different levels of, I'll say, automation knowledge and tool sets that we can pass off to those different individuals and teams within the enterprise to better enable that kind of bottom up approach to becoming more efficient as and using it more so at like a holistic level. So becoming more efficient just outside of IT, outside of just the engineering team. How do we make the accountants more efficient? How do we make, internal audit more efficient, right? And that all of that rolls up to help your overall bottom line at the end of the day.
It's more like hyper acceptance of automation across the enterprise.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I have a slightly simplified version of, specifically when you talk about no code and low code tools. Look, obviously they have a very important purpose to play, right? They make it, at the end of the day, all of these, whenever we talk about automation, we're trying to automate business, right? IT exists for the purpose of business. And so we are really, in a lot of ways, handing over the control of whatever all these tools to enable the business to do better. Now, what does no code do? They actually allow business users to do things much faster. They do it on their own, and almost like the way we create a center of excellence that even is not required. Suddenly they can take one thing or the other, etc. Now, I have my own opinions on how complicated that is or how simple that is, but I won't go into that right now. But I think the more important part here is I'll take a very day-to-day equivalence of what we have, right? So if you had to, for example, before TikTok came, right? We were not having those kind of, we were all on Facebook, we were creating videos, but we didn't have those kind of modules created. It gave us a direction to do something. And there was an entire genre created around articles, around people trying to present themselves on TikTok, creating instant stuff, etc. Now it's great for what it is, but it is not what you will do if you were to try to make a movie, right? A professional movie. TikTok makes a actor out of all of us, a director out of all of us, etc. But it doesn't really help us make a movie that all of us want to watch. In my world, low code, no code does that. It has a capability, it has a usefulness, it helps people put together things quickly if they wanted to do a POC or do a good quick test of the market or something that they wanted to do and they didn't have the resources to, etc., to quickly execute. But if you're really talking about a Fortune 500 company trying to use technologies to do something in a structured manner, there's a lot that can be done. Low code, no code necessarily will have a small play in it, but not a whole lot of play in it. I think that the technologies are themselves evolving, and they really will be the reason, and bringing that technologies together for a greater advantage, digital worker, etc., are where the companies will see the maximum advantage. And I think that's really what would be the larger focus of what we will do from a business perspective.
No, absolutely. I think that's an interesting analogy, Ajay. And I think obviously, I think from an enterprise perspective, the risk and security and compliance, those factors also come in. Obviously, those are important considerations to do, especially in financial services. Which again, Sidney and Jairo have significant experience. So actually, I want to take a segue from there in terms of managing. You said kind of solving the business problems, right? I think one of the key challenges that we've been seeing and tracking really is obviously how do you take business along, right? I'm sure that's a big part of everybody's role in terms of how do you take them. Of course, tools like low code, no code have a role to play there. They could be a very quick way to set up a POC and so on and demonstrate value and then kind of pave the way for. But so kind of taking the business users, educating them has always been key and integral to success of any initiative and definitely automation. So in last several years of your experience, how has that changed, right? How have you seen that evolving? And how do you see it going forward? I mean, are there some lessons to be learned for people who are maybe early on in their journey, right? I mean, Jairo, Sidney, you guys have been at it for several years. How have you seen it evolve, and any tips for people who are kind of lower on the maturity curve or starting out?
Yeah, I believe that if I give you a short answer to that, I think education is important, right? So educating the audience, right, and in this case, educating executives is going to be really important for you to drive certain strategic decisioning, and in how you want to place your RPA, COE or automation COE, right? So that's important, really important at the beginning of the process for those that are starting. I think later on, kind of going to the different, in our case is, our vision is to have a culture around automation, and it has to be global, right? So permeating the organization, having constant conversations with leaders, that may be senior leaders or middle management, that's going to be truly important, right? So for I guess the mission of the, automation COE at Equifax is not only to build automations, it's actually to educate people, to make sense of things such as citizen developer, right? So to make things of what is the next real business problem we're trying to solve, in which we think collectively, technology leaders, business leaders, executives, that automation is the answer, right? So, and I think until you get there, you will always receive or get or face resistance, right? But education in my mind is what is critical, as you engage with leaders. And yes, it has changed, right? So education about what is RPA, I don't think that's in many cases the question. That was the question 5 years ago, right? So today is the whole concept of around hyper automation, because that's what people is listening to. Right. So what is that, and how can we really take advantage of the evolution that the whole industry is seeing, as a result of this movement, right? So and apply it to our real business needs.
Right.
Yeah, I would definitely add to that. I completely agree in terms of the education. It's absolutely essential especially when you first start out in an automation program. it is important to educate your business stakeholders, not only about the technology, because I think that's one piece of it, but more importantly about the vision. What is the vision, and even more importantly, what is the business value that you're looking to drive through these different types of automation initiatives? If it's absolutely critical for your business users, if they cannot connect the business value to kind of the automation journey that you're taking them on, you're automatically going to hit a lot of blockers. It's going to take you longer to stand up things. It's going to be a lot of hand holding. So the more that you focus as a automation team on really truly partnering with the business, helping them to understand the vision. And I like to think of it as bringing them along in that kind of shared fate mentality, where it truly is you're connected together. It's a mission that you are undertaking in order to amplify the enterprise as a whole. And you start to kind of take down those walls or those blockers of, I work in the finance department and I'm an analyst and I don't deal with the tech side. And then vice versa, I'm an engineer, right? I don't deal with, the macros and, all of that type of stuff. So it's about taking the ego out of it, I will say. It's about opening yourself up to the possibility of that vision and truly driving together as business and technologists to achieve that overall mission of digital transformation. And it definitely involves a lot of, I'll say, kind of more of those soft skills of, communication and even psychology, just in terms of, again, taking away the silos and those distinctions that I would say for a vast majority of all of the industries that we're in, you still see the siloed mentality as just a cornerstone of business, so to speak. And I think I see that kind of devolving a little bit with the introduction of hyperautomation, the introduction of citizen development, et cetera.
That shared vision, the shared intent with the business, especially as you start solving a lot more complex problems by bringing in these other technologies that you talked about, that partnership needs to be at a much deeper level. It's not just, doing lip service to it. So absolutely. Sorry, Ajay, you making a point.
No. So I was just going to say, I think Sidney makes a wonderful point. Absolutely, the long-term vision is very important. And I think in my world, I've also seen a lot of very, very complex projects taken up by companies. They're all great projects with great vision statements, etc. But I've also seen them fail. And one of the big reasons I've seen when that happens is, especially when we are not able to, show early wins for business. So I would say, when we are looking, just adding on to what Sidney was saying, well, we have the long-term vision in mind, and yes, we're talking about citizen development, etc. I think we also need to create the journey map that is kind of giving wins to business early on, something to look at within, let's say, the month of a start of a project. Okay, this is something new that happened. There's a new visualization that we've been able to create because of the data that we got, versus waiting for the vision to become a reality after 3 years or 3.5 years. I think the value chain, the time frame of what the business is looking for in terms of results, etc., is very different. And almost you need a shot of it. You need to get it right, and you need to get it down quick. And if you've got it right, I think the business appetite to try and do two more things and try to explore that differently increases. Look, everybody is exposed to what technology is doing today, right? So if you were sitting in Arizona today, you would potentially be able to get on to a self-driving car and get to your office as well. Like they're trying to do that on a remote. So obviously the people who are doing that, who are basically putting their life at the hands of something which is machine learning and computer vision and all of that put together, and much more. So we see technology happening around us. I think there is clearly a kind of almost an understanding that it can happen. I think when it comes to doing my day job, and when that happens, and if you're not able to kind of break it down as to how that might influence, that is a challenge. And I think that's where some of the, the I would say smaller wins, if those can be articulated well, the chances of success are much, much higher.
Yeah, I think that's very wonderfully put, Ajay. So I think if I look at the points that you guys made, so creating that shared vision, right? Educating them well and collaborating well with them, and then demonstrating through the early wins. I think that's that's a good framework to look at in terms of how do you really create a path for success. But I think also coming out of that, I think Jairo touched upon it in terms of creating that culture and mindset of automation. I think Sydney, we were also chatting about that. So I think some of the research that we've done, it still shows that organizations are not fully ready yet to manage this human machine digital workforce, right? There's still some challenges that we're running into. So whether it's terms of management of this digital workforce, whether it's Sydney, I know the topic close to your heart around citizen developer, how do you, kind of bring that into it? So maybe we talk a little bit about, this entire change management and culture aspect of it, and what does it really kind of taking it one level deeper from that overall kind of taking the business along. So I don't know, Ajay, if you want to take that first and share
Sure,
your
right.
perspective.
It
What
is
you guys are
probably the
doing.
most complex topic. I started by saying we are doing the same thing that we did. It's just the modernization of technology. But I think the most complex aspect around that is how that, the next stages of the technologies is influencing what we do on a day-to-day basis. And, a lot of times it is about business deciding what they really need to do, and all of us trying to enable that to happen. And digital worker is nothing but business trying to say, okay, I was doing this activity. There was a whole set of, I needed 200 people or 150 people trying to do this. A lot of them are repeatable tasks. That's what RPA did early on. Then we said, okay, RPA cannot do these 3 things or 5 things, or this is where it's going wrong. Or the image, if I even try to break it down into what a invoice looks like, etc. This is how you can break it down. I think what machine learning, computer vision, etc. has done is simplified a lot of that. Now, if you are a department head running a department of these 200 people, you need to understand what the vision looks like. The people in the team who are running that need to understand what that looks like. And there are, from a change management perspective, it means that what I do on a day-to-day basis is a different job. If I was used to doing 20 things, I will not be doing those 20 things tomorrow morning. Eventually, it will be a different set of things that I will end up doing. And I need to be able to adopt to that change to say what I can, will or will not do. If does that make sense? Does it even add value? Absolutely. And I think once we have that shared vision, you will see success. Take an example of a tennis match, right? So you play tennis. The earlier there were a ball boy or a ball person who would be looking at every time the ball goes out and saying it's out or not, and with their responsibility, they'll be doing 3 other things as well along with that. But now with automation, now we know, the cameras are going to detect when the ball's outside. The referee is going to make a judge, umpire is going to make a judgment based on what they actually see. What is the purpose of that particular job, or we can actually change it. As long as we have a clear direction, vision of what that happens, you would have full support of the entire organization doing it, including players, right? Because they also, it's their experience too that matters. And if that is there, that business will, that game with such sport will evolve to adopt it. Otherwise, it will reject it. And I think the same thing happens in business. Same thing happens in all the other areas that we see. It's really the experience of the people who are doing the job, how that is going to be changing. That has to be well understood and accepted by business.
Right. Again, I think communication also being a big part of, how do you communicate it to the people affected or going to get affected.
Correct.
Yeah. Sydney, your perspective on it? Sydney, definitely
Yeah,
close to your heart.
yeah, I think Ajay pointed out a really great point, which is it really does boil down to the the user experience, or I'll say and in this scenario, the end user is the employee. So how are we cultivating talent? How are we driving innovation by actually appealing to the marketplace, right? In terms of pulling in new employees into the company and to help us drive forward our initiatives. And a lot of that does have to do with the tools that those employees will have at their disposal, and the types of projects, the innovation that they'll be able to work on as a part of your organization. And that in and of itself, we're starting to see, I'll say, a change in the marketplace whereby companies need to appeal to the talent that specializes in these areas. So you're looking to appeal to your data scientists, right, to come into the fold. And we hear all of these, I'll say, scary stats about, the lack of data scientists, the lack of this, the lack of that, in specifically in relation to innovative emerging technologies, right? And saying, well, we're not going to have enough individuals with those skill sets to drive forward the technology initiatives. And that is where I think there's an opportunity, almost like there's an opportunity there to say, okay, well, do we really need to have do we really need to staff up an entire department full of data scientists? Or if we know that there is a bit of a disparity there, how can we better enable the employees that exist today to better understand the nuances, right, around that area? And it's not saying that they're ever going to become, a data scientist or an engineer building out machine models, but what it's saying is that understanding can then seep into the way that they even think about their own business processes. And it helps, in essence, it's almost a precursor to then passing off those processes to your more senior qualified data scientists, engineers, things of that nature. So it's almost about trying to maneuver around the obstacles that we previously put in place by having these very strict structures in place, where if you work in a certain department, you have little to no understanding about another department, and saying, okay, how can we actually change that? Because we're all driving towards the same initiatives within our organization. So we all should be better informed, right, about how we can enable that movement through the pipeline. And I think that does come down to low code, no code a bit. It comes down to citizen developers. It comes down to citizen data scientists, which have started to come out, like all of those types of things, where it's really about changing what it means to actually be a business person at the end of the day, which I think is quite fascinating. And there's a lot of kind of conversation around that topic.
Got it. That's a great point. I know you've scaled up the entire operation beautifully over the last several years that we've been collaborating. So what have your key learnings been, right? Any learnings you would like to share?
Yeah, just real quick. So certainly I agree with what Ajay and Sidney have said. I think when we look at change management, you have to take a look at that from different perspectives. It's not only about thinking about the organization and how we'll adapt, and do we have the skills. That's one part, right? I think the other one is who is receiving or who is the recipient of this automation. When it comes to larger organizations and larger operational groups where you have hundreds of people, yeah, that could be really challenging, right? Because you go with the word automation, people start to be afraid, right? And that will always be present. So how you deal with that fear of automation is always going to be really important. Like in our case, setting out the vision, letting everybody know that automation is going to be part of how we do things, rewarding people that are really, putting ideas in front, and trying to look for ways to automate what they do, right? But also be sensitive of the impacts of automation, because I've seen automations fail and projects fail because we did not, spend enough time talking to people, listening to what they had to say, sensing their desire, and dealing with the issue, right? Because most times or many times when you are facing resistance, it's a human issue. It's not technology issue, right? So that part is so critical, and it will help you learn as you go. And at Equifax, we've learned, through, hard times, what are the, the errors, that you always face if you don't do this ahead of time, versus when you engage folks, when they're becoming part of the effort, when you are communicating to them what's going on, and as you're building tools for our people to feel like they can be more proactive, they can perform better, that they are rewarded, not only to adopt it, but to use it. I think that creates an environment where you just enable your organization to have a very healthy competition within different teams, and as you see performance and you see your business performance indicators go up or improve, and then you use that and communicate that, as Ajay was saying, I think that's really, really important. But you have to have a sense of mind in which you have to define the vision, really mean it, sense the desire of the organization, and act upon the different issues that you're going to face, right? If you do that, then you have better ways for people to start slowly but surely trusting that automation is good for them, right? And if our folks in the front line, they trust it, then we have a way to show it, and show it at a scale allows for executives to continue to drive decisions around what you're trying to do for the company and for your customers.
No, absolutely. I think that the trust and transparency is really key. I think we're coming up on our time. So thanks so much, Ajay. And I think it's been a great conversation. I really thanks Sidney, Jairo, and Ajay. I think it's just kind of my key takeaways. Technology will continue to evolve as it has always been. And again, all of these programs are probably going to be more about people than really about technology. I think technology, you, in some ways you can really solve and bring all of those tools together, but really creating that shared vision, educating people, bringing them along, and then kind of making them part of those early wins and continuing to demonstrate those wins is really, really key. So again, thank you everyone for this wonderful chat today. And I'm really hoping that the audience can take away a lot of key takeaways and learnings and insights that they can implement in their own organizations. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. And thank you for giving us this opportunity. Appreciate it.